Impact OC, the only program showcasing the people and organizations shaping Orange County. With your host, Dawn Camber.
Hello, I'm OC Talk Radio Public Affairs Director Dawn Camber with another great guest impacting our community in a positive way. OC Talk Radio streams live from UCI's Beal Applied Innovation Center. Today, I welcome 211 Orange County President and Chief Executive Officer Karen Williams. The organization is known as 211 OC. It's a local, private, nonprofit organization. Karen, thank you for being on Impact OC.
Thank you so much, Dawn, for inviting me.
The mission of 211 OC is to help people find the help they need by eliminating the barriers to finding and accessing social services in Orange County. How are you able to do that?
Well, Dawn, the way we're able to do that is it's really having a number of ways to connect people to the resources that are in the community. 201 Orange County serves as that connecting point between an individual and the over 3,000 programs that are available to the residents of Orange County. And it's been a very interesting time here this last year with COVID because a lot of people had never heard of 211 Orange County, and we talk about the newly vulnerable, those who've been really impacted by the pandemic, whether they've lost their jobs or whether they've been sick themselves. And the stories we've heard have just been absolutely incredible. But I'd like to back up a little bit, which is really to talk about a year ago, February, when we had our National 211 Day. And at that point, we were able to bring people together back in a congregant setting, if you remember that. And we had 8 different sessions with people. We invited people to come and see us. And we talked about love, compassion, and community. And a lot of what we talked about and how we got to that point was to really look at the cycle, what happens when somebody comes into 211. I was approached by a woman whose son had been helped by 211, and when she introduced herself to me, it was at a business function. She reached out her hand and she said, "I wanted to make sure I introduced myself to you directly because 211 saved my son's life." That's pretty impactful. And when she told me the story of what he had been through, he was in his early 20s, a kid who had problems with both mental illness and substance issues, and ended up being homeless, as so many young people end up doing. And somebody gave him a 211 card, and he called 211, and we were able to listen to him and get him connected to the right program, and he's thriving now because of that. And you think about that, and I thinking about the steps you really went through, and it's love, the love of the parent, friend, self-love of somebody who says there needs to be a solution. Can somebody help me? The compassion of the person taking the call, one of our care coordinators on the phone who's listening with a very empathetic ear, who then connects with the community of all these wonderful nonprofit agencies in the community, over 1,200 of them, to get them connected to the right resource. So really love, compassion, community, I think says it all.
And explain the process. Someone calls 211 and exactly what occurs.
So there are actually a number of ways that people can come into 211. And so we call ourselves the virtual front door for the community. People can just dial the number 211 on their phone and get to us, or they can text us. And this is really important because this has ended up being a huge avenue for people. They can text us at 898-211 and just text in their zip code, and they come to us and we can go ahead and have a conversation with them. Or they can email us at help@211oc.org, or they can go to our website, which is 211oc.org, and can find help there. That being said, once somebody calls us, and that's really still the majority of the way people get a hold of us, but once people talk to us, What we do is we do a brief assessment. We find out what their situation is, and we'll probe to see if there are other needs. So, for example, if somebody is needing help with rental assistance, now there's some programs in place to help people. But before, there really weren't many programs that could help give that kind of assistance. However, there are programs that can allow us to get people connected to food. The CalFresh program, which could save a family up to $500 in grocery bills on a monthly basis, which would free up that money to go pay their rent. There's help with utility assistance, which we can get people connected to. There are less expensive mobile phone programs, cellular phone programs we can get people connected to. Internet. It's income generated or based on what your income is, but we can get people into a lesser cost internet access program as well. So we try to take a look at all the different issues that somebody might have. Do they need childcare? Do they have medical insurance? Do they need help with that? And then get them connected to the best programs possible.
And how many people are available to take the 211 call?
Well, it varies. So we're open 24/7, 365 days a year, multilingual. We have, any given time, I'd say probably 20, 25 people actively either on the phone. They also are doing the two-way texting and the emailing. It can expand and contract depending on the different programs that we're working on. But I would say that is probably the average. We're probably up to about 30 right now. People. But it was interesting in terms of looking at what happened with COVID. We were very fortunate in that we had somebody who reached out to us in February a year ago who said, you need to really pay attention to what's coming down the pike here. You guys are going to get impacted in a big way. And we had heard of, we had just started hearing about the coronavirus, if you remember, back in early February. And we realized that people would call us, and would we be able to handle the calls, especially if we had to work remotely? How were we going to do that? So what we thought about was this newly vulnerable population. We figured probably had access to a computer and to an internet, and they most likely were fairly internet savvy. So we decided to direct our resources into our website and build out some pieces on our homepage that allow people to connect directly to information, anything at all that has to do with COVID. So if somebody comes to our website now and they're interested in seeing what the status is of some government payment that's coming out with part of a new plan, they can connect onto this button and get to a page that will provide all the updated information on that. And that was a huge, huge help, especially initially when people were trying to figure out, what do I need to do? Do I need to, what are the symptoms? Where do I go? What do I need to keep clean? And one of my favorite actually were some of the seniors that we helped who called, who had the money to be able to order food online but didn't know how to navigate through the different apps. So we actually became technical assistants to those folks. But that being said, what we were able to do is get prepared, and we were actually working remotely completely by March 9th, which was a good week and a few days before the state said we need to all work remotely. So, and we're still working remotely today. We have a handful of people in-house, but it's worked very, very well for us.
And you're connecting people to services instantaneously?
So what we do is we provide, it depends on what the situation is. Right now, we will provide them the connecting numbers to get to that resource, or if it's an emergency situation, we will do a warm transfer of people over. However, there are a couple of things that we do for people where they don't have to transfer over. So, for example, a CalFresh appointment, we can actually do an application for people. We set up a one-to-one appointment and we do the application for them. The same thing with the emergency rental assistance program that's available right now through the county. We can actually have the person on the phone, we can do the full application with them, and we can submit it for them. So that's a big help.
Do they have to be an Orange Countyan for you to help them?
Yeah, well, they have to. Yeah, they have to be living in Orange County for us to help them. It doesn't mean that somebody can't call us and get help for a family member, which they can. But there's also there are over 250 211s in the country, and they all offer similar types of programs. And that's one of the things that I've said many times to people is that if you have a relative who lives in a different area of the country, tell them to call the 211. Because that's all you have to do is just dial the number, and it's based on your geographic area, and you'll get connected.
I also know that when there is a disaster, many times people contact you to get help, whether it's cold outside, they need a place to be, or if it's too hot, they need to get to a cooling center.
Yes, absolutely. And as a matter of fact, we've become more and more involved in the disaster response types of programs. Recently, we are involved with a program with San Diego Gas and Electric for the southern part of Orange County on their power safety, public safety power shutoff programs, PSPS events, which is really focused on how do you make sure that somebody in need has resources that if their power gets shut off, we can get them connected to either a portable generator, we can get them to a location where they can have electricity. And I think right now with what's going on in Texas and the rest of the country right now with the electricity being shut off, that's a perfect example of where 211s can offer a great deal of help.
What about people who are suddenly out of work and they're confused what to do?
So we do a couple of things. One is that we can obviously help them navigate through what they need to do to sign up for unemployment. We can get them connected to job training programs if there are some. As a matter of fact, we work with the county workforce development group and actually have some of their folks who come in through them work for us. We give them 3 months worth of training. And then who would have ever thought a year ago that having call center training would be a really great job skill, but it turns out it really is for what we're doing today. So yeah, there are a lot of different things we can get people connected to. And I think that's one of the key pieces here to really think about is that if you don't need a 211 right now in your life, you probably know somebody who could use the help, whether it's somebody who needs to be connected to a substance program, somebody who needs help with that kind of thing, or somebody who needs to have help with transportation. We have 211 Ride, which helps map out for people ways to get around between multiple counties to get access to help. We have a veterans program. We've got a really closely knit collaborative program with veterans and for veterans and their families that is just a terrific program offering resources.
What kinds of resources?
So everything from, once again, help with food, help with rent, any kind of we call it battle buddies, but where you have somebody who can actually walk through the process with you, whether you're looking to get a job or whether you're having issues where you need to work with a counselor. But we actually, in this group, they assign somebody who will stay with the person the whole way. It's pretty.
And you cultivate relationships with many organizations to assist you in your mission.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, one of the things that we're the most excited about are these partnerships with these different agencies in Orange County. We have over 1,200 nonprofit partners who work with us, and they're very, very important. For example, one of the food programs we got involved with in June is called Delivering with Dignity, and we're one of the founding partners with several other groups, with the Dragon Kim Foundation as the leader of it. And what they did is they said, well, how do we make sure that restaurants keep people employed? And how do we make sure that we get food to people? And so we became the partner that connected with the different nonprofit agencies to say, give us the names of your people that you know who need to get food, but they don't fit into the government programs for whatever criteria. They might not be old enough, but they have issues with COVID. If I could, one story is just incredible. It really tugs at your heartstrings. When we were talking with one of the hospitals about the program, and they were looking at providing some funding for the food. I was told about the story of a family who is living in a garage in Garden Grove. Both the mom and the dad ended up having COVID. They both were supposed to check into the hospital, but they had two young kids. So the mom said, I can't do that. And when the hospital found out that we could actually deliver restaurant prepared warm meals for the family, even though they lived in a garage, we could get that to them. We could get them food so they would have something to eat. The gal in charge of the program actually broke down in tears. And this is somebody who's been in this business for decades, who normally you wouldn't think would be that touched by it, but it's just so frustrating. There's so much that kind of need out there, and it's hidden. It's not something we all see.
What time of day do you generally get certain kinds of calls? Like overnight, do you get a certain set of calls as opposed to during the day?
No, interestingly enough, the calls at night are not as frequent as you would think. And I think part of that is that most of the nonprofits are only open Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, 8 to 5. And so somehow within the scope of things, people have gotten trained to think that there's not a whole lot of need. We still get calls, but it's probably about maybe 30% of our normal call volume.
Is it staff that takes the calls, or do you have trained volunteers?
Well, actually both. It's primarily staff. We have trained volunteers, although we found for our volunteers, one of the things they really tend to like to do is the two-way texting, because they don't have to come up with immediate answers if they're not quite sure how to help somebody. It's something that they can take a moment or two and look up themselves. So that seems to help. And of course they can work from their home, which is a really lovely opportunity for them, especially during this time of COVID. We do send our calls to the Ventura 211 between 10 o'clock at night and 7 in the morning, just because, as I said, we get so few calls during that period of time. It doesn't make economic sense to be operational here in Orange County.
How are you funded?
We are funded through a number of different ways. We have government grants, of course. We have some funding from the County of Orange. We have some city grants. We're running some programs for, like, the city of Santa Ana. We're running one of their emergency rental help programs. And we have funding from the state. But we also get quite a bit of our funding comes in from private foundations and individuals.
Do you find that you're getting more calls this year? I mean, we'll say during this COVID period as opposed to any other year?
Oh, absolutely. As I mentioned to you, we started working remotely at the beginning of March 9th. And March 16th is when we saw this huge spike of calls coming in. And we had a little bit of a drop off, not huge. We've never gotten back to the old amount, but it went down a little bit. I want to say maybe end of August, September timeframe, and it's back up again as people are trying to find vaccines and such. But I can give you some stats that are pretty interesting. Things like healthcare, and this is just a daily, looking at it from a daily standpoint, year over year. So we got 62 calls for healthcare one day last week versus 23 on the same day a year ago. So triple the amount. Same thing with utility assistance. That's running about 3 times as high volume. not just the request for the particular area. Food is more than double, although last March it was probably quadruple. We were running 4 to 5 times the amount of calls the first couple months of the pandemic. And then the other thing that's been so interesting, because we have all these different ways to access us, is that our website traffic it's huge. It's more than doubled. It goes between double and triple on given the day from where we were before. And our texting, same thing, 333 on one day versus 168 the year before. So, and we expect that to stay up this year.
So you're able to prevent people from being homeless.
Yes, that's exactly what we do. It's been interesting talking with people. There are a lot of people who have opinions about how people should pull themselves up by the bootstrap, etc., which is kind of hard to do when you don't have a pair of boots. So what we're trying to do is to keep these people from the newly vulnerable from falling into homelessness, which thankfully there is funding that's been coming in to provide that back rent, which I'll point out is rent that's going to the landlord, who also is hurting because they haven't been getting paid any rent, right? So it's kind of like we're all in this together. And when I've talked to people, take a look at, for example, this 8,000 people who've contacted us. If you have an average of 4 per household, that's 32,000 people. We can't think about having 32,000 additional people who are homeless. I mean, it's staggering when you think about the numbers. So,
are you in need of more volunteers?
Yep, we could definitely use more volunteers. Absolutely. A lot of ways they can help us. One of the things that we need to do with our resource database is that we have to keep all of our information up to date. So, when we were first hit with the pandemic, the group it was crazy. We were keeping all of the food pantry information, who's open, who's not, what hours, if they have limited hours, and it was changing daily. Just a lot of work. And I think as we see things coming open, we're definitely going to need help with people if they can volunteer to reach out to these different groups and make sure that we've got the most up-to-date information.
What are the requirements of volunteers?
Not a whole lot. Interest in helping. Having a computer is one, obviously, but we provide other items that they might need as well.
Karen, how do you want to be perceived?
Love, compassion, community. I think that's really it. We're here to help people, and we really hope that we can start a movement of people thinking about love, compassion, and community. We're all in this together.
Thank you, 211 Orange County President and Chief Executive Officer Karen Williams, for being on Impact OC. And I thank everyone for tuning in. I'm OC Talk Radio Public Affairs Director Dawn Camber. Have an impactful day.
You've been listening to Impact OC, the only program showcasing the people and organizations shaping our community. Right here on Orange County's only community radio station, OC Talk Radio.